So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to everyone for joining us today, and welcome to our webinar. Our webinar topic today is Increasing Member Retention, the Science and the Art. And we have with us today Phil Bonomo, Director of TRP North America, and Phil will be our presenter for today. And my name is Sophie Adams, Business Development for TRP North America. So just before we get started, just a quick overview to ensure that everything's working properly. So firstly, just at the top of your page, the right-hand corner, there's a control screen. So I just want to make sure everyone can actually see and hear. So on your control screen, you will actually see a little hand. So if everyone would just take a minute and raise that little hand so we can see that everything is technically working from a technical perspective. So if you can just take a minute or a second and raise that hand, that would be great. And then just while you're doing that, everyone will be in listen-only mode just to ensure that there's no background noise. But if you do have any questions or comments, also in that panel you will see a question and chat area. So you can pop in your questions within that panel, and then throughout, if they're relevant to the time of Phil speaking or presenting that specific topic, then we will address it at that time. If not, then we will wait till the end of the webinar to actually address any questions as well. So it looks like everyone, a couple more people, looks like everyone is good to go and can hear and can see everything. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Phil Bonomo, again, our Director of North America TRP. So over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Sophie. You all can put your hands down. There we go. Well, it's great to be with you this afternoon. It's a wonderful midsummer afternoon, and I know that we all have the kind of the title slide of our presentation on the screen. Rest assured that neither of those photographs is me, but rather we're going to talk a little bit about a very famous scientist and a very famous artist, and we're going to try to tie those into the whole concept of member retention, how we measure it, how we approach it, how we interact with members, and really the art of the interaction as well. So hopefully those of you who've heard me speak before, you'll hear a few new things. A lot of what I typically present, I like to reinforce again and again. So you'll see a few concepts that are probably familiar to you, but it is always good to revisit the whole idea of focusing and evolving our culture on one that really focuses on retaining members for the long haul. So we're going to talk about increasing member retention, the science and the art. The majority of you know who we are, TRP, but I'll just reinforce that we are the only firm in the industry to focus exclusively on member loyalty and retention. And we're proud to have many of you that are on the call today as customers, and I'm hoping that some of you who are not currently customers will be encouraged to pursue an opportunity whereby we can work together in the future. This is a slide that many of you may have already seen, and I really like to set the tone when we talk about retention by really reiterating, I think, which is one of the most critical quotes that I've ever seen around the concept of retention, and it's by Frederick Reichelt, who is also a friend of TRP, and as you all know, the fellow that invented the ultimate question, or the Net Promoter Score. And what Frederick Reichelt says is retention is not simply one more operating statistic. It is a central gauge that integrates all dimensions of a business and measures how well the firm is creating value for its customers. It is the single indicator for measuring sustainable growth. I think when we look at the way we run our businesses, we find that the indicators for measuring growth are very often not just retention. We think about many, many other things that really truly make up what we feel are the operating statistics that we want to follow. But what Fred is saying here really simplifies our thinking, and that is that if we focus on retention, everything else falls into place. If we focus on giving our members the type of experience that is going to keep them coming back again and again and again, then things like profit, things like margin, things like ancillary sales, those can all be taken care of. So if we focus first on retention, then we're in a position to essentially focus on everything else. It really helps to simplify our thinking, I think. So we're gonna reference a couple of very famous people. If you don't know who these folks are, I'll tell you they are two of the most really the famous people in the arts and in the sciences. Of course, we have Albert Einstein on the left, and we have Pablo Picasso on the right. And so we're going to reference both of those during our talk today, and we can use some of the things that they have said and done as really object lessons for us as we focus on member retention within our facilities. So first, let's talk about Albert Einstein. I think this is an extremely compelling quote. Write it down, capture it. I think it really does help us to underscore the whole concept of member retention. If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And in my travels across the continent and with many of you, as I've met with you and trained you and visited with you, we often talk about what is retention. We try to define it. And the definition of retention can be a really broad category. And I find that if you ask 10 people what is their definition of retention, you very often will get 10 different answers. So what I'd like to do is have us all at least focus on one simple explanation of retention. It's one that I hold near and dear, and it's the one that I really leverage a lot of my discussion of retention around. I want to explain it simply. I do believe I understand it pretty well, and I want to communicate that to you now. So let's talk about definitions for a moment. Now, you see attrition there. You know, very often we find ourselves confusing attrition for retention. So before we talk about retention, let's get attrition out of the way, shall we? Attrition is the net percentage of members lost over a period of time. Now think about that. On January 1, let's say your facility has 10,000 members. We should all be so lucky. And let's say over the course of the year, we add 1,000 members. So we've had an addition of 1,000 members or 1,000 new sales. Presuming we keep all the members that we started with, and we'll talk about that in a moment when we discuss retention, presuming we keep everyone that we started with, let's say we lose 2,000 members. So our net membership lost, which is attrition, is about 10%. And it's funny because we always think about attrition. I don't know what the opposite of attrition is, but we often find ourselves having net membership gains as well. So it's really the net percentage of members lost over a period of time. That's what attrition is. Now, let's hold up retention next to attrition. And my very simple definition for retention is the average membership length of members over a period of time. Retention really is not about a net gain or a net loss of memberships. It is about what is the average length of each membership that you have within your member base. So a member that stays 12 months, a member that stays 14 months, if you get an average, that average retention is 13 months. And when we think about retention, incremental gains in member retention, incremental gains in the average length of a membership can have tremendous impact on your bottom line as a business. Think about the numbers of members that you serve today. Think about your monthly rate. Whatever you make every month, let's say that we add over the course of a year, we're adding on average 1 month of membership. That's 1 month's EFT that can go directly to the bottom line of the business. So by focusing on retention, by focusing on extending memberships, we're actually doing something that can have a dramatic impact on the bottom line of our business. So attrition is really just a simple numbers game. Members gained versus members lost. Subtract that from your starting point. But then retention is how long are those members staying? And each and every one of you should have a handle on that number, because that is a great gauge for success. If we're focusing, like Fred Reichelt says, on retention, then everything else will fall into place. So let's look at a comparison between retention and attrition. And this might make the simple concept even simpler for you. So let's say we have 2 clubs, and those of you who I've trained have seen this slide before. So let's say we have 2 clubs and we have 100 members per club. And then we have 5 members cancel per club, so that we have an attrition rate of 5%. So 95% of their members have remained members. Now, it looks like these 2 clubs are exactly the same, doesn't it? But when you dig into the retention calculus, something very different happens, because you have to look at how long are each of the members in my facility that are leaving, how long have they been members? So let's look at this. Let's say in Club 1, we've had 5 cancellations. We have Sue, Sally, Barry, Elvis, and Dave. And we see some significant months of membership that these folks have stayed with us. Now, when you add all those up, that represents a lot of revenue, or a lot of potential revenue that has been lost. Because one could suggest that a member that has stayed for 32 months would most likely have a very good potential for staying longer, and yet Barry has attrited, and we really find ourselves wanting to ask why. But within these 5 members, we see many, many more months of membership than in Club 2, where Sarah, Kate, Steve, Chris, and Bill, they've all left, but they represent, on the bottom line and in terms of retention, they represent much shorter memberships. The objective of retention is to take every member and try to figure out how do we keep them longer. Now, every member is eventually going to leave your facility. There's no question about it. How do we delay that act of a member quitting your facility in such a way that they represent greater revenue for your bottom line? And when we think about retention, it is an industry challenge. And in fact, in our most recent research, we see that literally after about 12 months, we see about a 50% retention rate. So that means that 50% of your members after 12 months that joined 12 months ago have left. They've left the facility. And so my suggestion here is, how do we begin to lessen this curve? How do we begin to flatten out this curve? We go out to 48 months, we see that only about 10% of our members have remained. That's a very, very inefficient model. If we can begin to move this curve up 2 to 3%, maybe even 4 to 5%, well, what we're doing is a very, very simple calculus of turning opportunity, and that's everything that's above this line, into revenue, which is everything below this line. So really focusing on retention, focusing on extending each member life is very, very important to our businesses. Now, here at TRP, we've done quite a bit of study on the whole art of communicating with our members. We find ourselves very often in our facilities kind of hanging out with those members that are regulars. We build friendships, we have camaraderie with them, etc., etc. But when you think about the limited resources that you have in your building at any given time, wouldn't it be great if we could direct our resources to the members that need us the most? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Because we at TRP really do believe that the retention challenge is very often a communications challenge. This is a chart that shows the impact of interactions on retention. And it's got some very, very dramatic results that I want to share with you. Let's say we have 0 interactions with a member. And believe me, there are facilities out there, maybe not any of yours, but there are facilities out there where there are very few, if any, interactions with members. It's really a situation where a member will literally check in and virtually be invisible within the facility. When a member has not had an interaction, we're looking at literally about a 50% drop-off in those members after what is ostensibly 7 months. So the learning here is every member that joined and has not had a quality interaction with a staff member, chances are they're going to be leaving your facility within 7 months. What's amazing is by simply having 1 to 3 interactions with that member, and we'll talk about what those interactions can be in a moment. By simply having 1 to 3 interactions with those members, we can actually extend the membership by nearly 5 months. That's pretty significant. And again, as I'm talking, the average length of a membership, how do we expand that? How do we add months to those memberships? And the theory, and actually the proof, is that when we talk to our members, when we have meaningful interactions with our members, we keep them longer. And it stands to reason. You know, when we participate in a club, when we go to a restaurant, when we shop at a store, when we do anything that requires some kind of customer service interaction, we find ourselves more attracted to those businesses that actually pay attention to us. Customer service is at a premium these days. And when you get good customer service, that's a business that you want to do more business with in the future. So that opportunity to have that interaction with that member cannot be discounted. And then when we have 4 or more interactions, we're seeing very significant results, where we're not seeing 50% of those members dropping off after 6 or 7 months. We've actually seen that those memberships continue to endure. These are members that have literally become part of the family in a facility. These are members that have become part of the culture. And because they're part of the culture, and you all remember the old Cheers analogy where everyone knows your name, when you're part of a culture where people are looking for you and looking out for you, you're more likely to remain part of that culture. So this is the sort of culture that we look for in the clubs that we work with. Do the math. Even at $50 per month, by simply having, I should say, those 4 interactions with a member or more, we're adding 11 months of membership. And when you do the math, there's some very significant dollars there that are available to us. I wrote this headline and came up with this picture, and I realized I had come up with a double pun. So we want to talk a little bit now about what are the drivers of the club culture. What are those things within a club that dictate whether or not that club is an interactive club, a club that really does look forward to identifying members that need interaction and having that interaction with them, versus clubs that do not. So the drivers of the club culture as we currently see them are pretty straightforward. We find ourselves tracking sales. And you've heard me tell this story again and again. We are on a 30-day cycle. And when we stay on that 30-day cycle, we look at things in 30-day increments and we focus on what are those things that are going to allow me to meet my sales targets on a month-to-month basis. And we find ourselves compromising as a result of that, often selling to the wrong member or selling at a price that is lower than what is the most appropriate price for our business. So we really are currently looking at a driver in sales targets that, while it's important, if that becomes the key driver for a business, it can drive you crazy and it can drive your members away. We talked about attrition versus retention earlier. If we only focus on attrition, we're focusing on literally one half of the equation. Focusing on membership income. You know, we're seeing more and more clubs generate greater and greater proportions of their revenue with non-dues revenue, personal training, nutrition programs, etc. So if we just focus on the income we're generating from memberships, we lose a lot of opportunity to gain additional share of pocket with our members. Certainly audits, member usage, profits and loss, those are all things that are current drivers of the club culture. What I'd like us to think about, though, is can we evolve? Granted, those drivers are important, but can we really get into the soft science of member loyalty? Can we figure out ways to get our members to really fall in love with us so that they're referring more and more of their friends and family members? What sort of a culture do we have whereby we have staff that are committed and passionate about what we do as a business? How do we get greater yield out of each membership where they're paying us their dues every month and then they're buying ancillary services? How do we keep that growth curve on the upswing? How do we turn our club into a community hub? You know, it is really a gathering place. It is really a place that people carve out time and look forward to spending time in if that club is delivering and interacting with its members on an ongoing basis. Is it a club that has a great reputation and a great culture? These are things that we really need to address if we want to evolve our culture from one that simply tracks kind of the black and white items and really gets into the soft science of serving the member and serving the member well. I was looking at some research and I found this terrific slide. I did not recreate it because I want to give credit where credit is due, and this is a slide from a woman named Melissa Lanier, and she came up with this great acronym for creating a culture change, and truly recommend that you write this down. If you want to get a copy of this slide, Sophie or I can send it to you. But it really spells the word create. Clarify values. You know, what are the values of the organization? How do we create connections between what your values are as leaders and the way the organization operates day in and day out? R, reinforce the vision. You know, anytime the vision is not clear, it's like having an orchestra without a conductor. You really have a mess on your hands. So reinforcing that vision on an ongoing basis and letting your employees know what are those metrics for success that you want them to adhere to is going to allow you to really reinforce the vision of your business. Empowering behaviors. You know, let your staff do things that they have not yet been empowered to do. Let them make decisions. Let them assume responsibility for making the member experience the best it possibly can be. And reinforce by allowing those behaviors to happen, and even if they may not happen according to the way that you'd like to see them happen, the fact that you're empowering your staff means you're giving them the leeway to make decisions to improve the business. Align conversations. The best club operators that I see have a similar vocabulary. They say a lot of the same things. They focus on a lot of the same things. They march to the same drummer. And this is what aligning conversations is about. And I would suggest that one of the conversations that you need to have with your staff is, let's have a conversation about retention. You know, let's make sure that we're all on the same page with how we define retention, and then how do we as an organization improve retention, maximize it. Targeting effort. Extremely important to target your effort to make sure that the rewards are essentially deployed according to the way you want your mission and your vision to be realized. So focusing people and empowering people and rewarding people for effort that is consistent with your vision is very, very important. And then emphasize success. You know, one of the things that we do through our Net Promoter Score surveys is we point out to our customers from time to time some of the great reviews that their staff members get back. And it's so easy to be a staff member in a facility and not really understand how much of a change and how much of an impact they're having on the members that they serve. And then when they get a great review back and a Net Promoter Score of 10, you know, that's where you really want to emphasize the success. You really want to put those staff people on a pedestal so that they understand, you know, wow, I am making a difference in this organization. And that's going to keep your staff longer. So let's think about, what are we measuring? You know, what are those things that are important to us? You know, is it just sales? I hope not. Is it just profit and loss? I hope not. Is it sales, profit and loss, and retention? I hope so. Because as Peter Drucker says, what gets measured gets managed. And so if you're measuring and holding in as high regard your retention statistics as you are your sales statistics, then you are going to win. But if all you focus on is sales, you're stuck in that 30-day cycle, which can become exhausting, and it can become literally a downward spiral. So focus on those retention metrics as well. Measure retention. So let me ask you a question. How many members will walk into your facility today wearing this t-shirt? I'm going to cancel my membership. Now the biggest threat to retention is cancellation. And cancellation doesn't just happen. Cancellation is a process. It's a member making a decision over time that either their fitness program is not having the results that they're looking for, it's not fitting into their schedule, they're not able to get the workouts in that they want, or the culture of the club is not consistent with their needs, wants, and desires. And so we have this process, and this process very often is happening in the background, in the member's mind. And then one day they're going to walk into your club, they're going to have this t-shirt on, and what are you going to do? They've virtually made a decision that they're on the verge of canceling their membership. Well, what we do at TRP is we actually give you the opportunity to measure on a member-by-member basis what their risk of dropout is. And we look at a number of different things like age, contract length, visit frequency. And we're actually able to put your members into 4 buckets. And these are very scientific terms. Low risk of dropout, medium risk of dropout, high, and very high. So the sweet science of what TRP brings to the table is every time a member checks into your facility, we know, are they wearing that red t-shirt today? Are they on the verge of canceling their membership? And what that does is it triggers an opportunity for an interaction. So when we look at this risk of dropout, essentially the higher that risk of dropout, the more important it is for us to have an interaction with that member. Members that are at low risk of dropout, they don't need an interaction to keep them as members. These are members for whom going to your facility is now part of their DNA. These are members who, come heck or high water, are going to make their workouts. They're going to come in 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 or 7 times a week. These members do not need our care and feeding. It's great to say hello to them, that's for sure. It's great to provide good customer service to every member. But I would suggest that when we're able to identify those members that are at very high risk of dropout, or even high risk of dropout, these are members that really need us. They need a life-saving interaction. Now, the reason I say a lifesaver, it's because if a member is at the risk of dropout, what is the best thing that we can do for that member? What is the best thing that we can encourage that member to do when they're low, medium, high, or in this case, very high? The best thing we can do for that member is not necessarily sell them a new contract or sell them a personal training package or sell them nutrition products. The best thing we can do for that member is get them to commit to their next visit. Because if I'm at a very high risk of dropout, what has happened there is my visit frequency has changed. I may have started in your facility at 3 or 4 times per week, and over time, my visit frequency pattern is changing. Maybe it gradually goes from 3 to 4 to 2 to 3, and then from 1 to 2, and then maybe 1 visit, or maybe a visit every other week. These are the signs of a member that is about to quit because they're falling off the habit. And we need to throw them a lifesaver to get them to commit to their next visit. So the higher the risk of dropout, the greater the need for an interaction. And why do we interact with a member? If a member is on the verge of quitting, why do we want to interact with them? Very simple. When we interact with members, they visit more often and they stay longer. And our research has shown this time and time again. It's amazing the art of human contact and the impact that it has with human beings. So we have tools that allow you to identify those most likely to drop out of exercise, to interact with members to keep them coming back, to determine how effective you are at doing this, and to proactively manage your member contact. But the tools are just that. A hammer does nothing until you swing it. So if you're using the tools that we provide you, then you can really see a gain, an improvement in your member retention based upon interacting with your members. So let's shift over now to Pablo Picasso. And I just absolutely love this quote. Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. You know, we're all artists. We're artists when it comes to communicating with other people. We're artists in the way that we operate our lives. It's because we know the general rules for doing things, and the general rule for retaining a member is knowing that that member is on the verge of dropping out, to have an interaction with them. So that's the rule. But you want to be able to break that rule like an artist. You want to be able to apply your own special brushstroke to every interaction that you have with a member. It can't be forced. It has to be natural. And so we want to learn the rules like a pro, and that's something that we teach time and again. But then we want you to take them and to own them. We want them to be your own. We don't want you to sound like some sort of rote machine that is basically saying, I see you haven't been visiting that often, and I'd like to invite you to your next visit. That doesn't work. So we want to learn the rules like a pro so we can break them like an artist. And there are a number of different interaction types that we can have with members that are at high risk of dropout. We really break them down into 2 buckets. One interaction type is a talk interaction. And that kind of an interaction is one where you can actually just talk with that member and ask them to do something. It might be to change one thing in their workout. A great talk interaction type is to recommend group exercise. You know, one of the biggest reasons why members drop out of health and fitness is because they get bored with their routine. We become creatures of habit in many of the things that we do. And our members do the same thing. So if we mix things up a bit, if we get members to think about, instead of jumping on that treadmill, why don't I jump in to that group exercise class? Get them mixed up in something where they can begin to feel that there's some variety that they can inject into their program. Group exercise is great because it also inserts them into a subculture in your facility. So suddenly they become accountable not only to you, but they become accountable to every member in that class, because people begin to look out for each other. You know, when someone doesn't show up for a group exercise class, what happens? People say, well, where is this person? So it's a great way to get them injected into a subculture in your facility. Recommend other activities, you know, mixing it up. You know, and we tend to be very, very hesitant to try new things. So show them, you know, show them how to do something new and different. Show them the safe way to do it. That can really be a great way to interact with a member that's at risk of dropout and give them an opportunity to really see that, you know, my fitness program doesn't have to be static and boring. Challenge them, you know, have a promotion where if they do something, you give them something. Certainly challenges and promotions within facilities tend to be very effective tools to get members to try new things. Build rapport. You know, get a friendship going with a member where it's not just a hi, how are ya, but really get to know these members. But most importantly, too, what can we do to get a member to commit to their next workout? Because, as I said earlier, we want to throw them that lifesaver. And if a member is on the verge of dropping out of your facility, the one thing you got to do during that interaction is, can I get them to commit to that next workout? Then we up the ante a little bit with these commit interaction types. And these are certainly a next level of next workout, next level of group exercise, the personal challenge, other activities to review their program. You know, maybe a member just needs to sit down with someone and say, look, I'm not getting the results that I want. What can you recommend? And there may be others. So initially we want to build rapport. We want to talk with members. But then we want to quickly move our interactions with these members into something that generates greater commitment from those members. And when we get a member that's committed, that's a member that's retained. We found that with commitment interactions, where we actually look face-to-face to a member and say, will you commit to coming in next Wednesday? Will you commit to going to this group exercise class tomorrow evening? We have found that those commitment interactions to get a member to return to the facility, typically within the next 7 days, are 15% more effective than straightforward talk interactions. So use the power of interaction to get a member to commit, and you're going to see your retention improve. And all we're really doing is we're talking to the right person at the right time with the right message. And when you hit on all three of those buttons, the right person, the right time, the right message, great things happen. But when we interact with people, we want to make sure that it's not about talking at someone. It's about talking with someone. Yes, we are the experts. We are the experts in health and well-being. And we know our members respect us for that. But that doesn't give us the opportunity to step up on the pulpit and tell a member what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. It's really about building a relationship with that member by talking with them, where you become a trusted resource to those members. And this is a lesson you've got to bring to your fitness staff, you've got to bring to your personal trainers, because they are such fonts of knowledge, but if that knowledge is dispensed by talking at people as opposed to having a conversation, then that knowledge is going to go for naught. So having that conversation, talking with someone, can be far more effective than talking at someone. I'm showing pictures of dead old men, I guess, today, but here's Winston Churchill. And, you know, he said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." And, you know, part of the interaction that we have with members is really about listening. And if we listen at least as much as we talk, then we're having a conversation. If we talk more than we listen, then we're talking at people. So sometimes it's best to just set the stage, start the conversation, and then listen. And it's amazing what members will tell us when given the opportunity, when they know that we are listening to them. So thanks to Winston Churchill for that, that little bit of advice. So when we talk to people, you know, what do we do? How do we start a conversation with a member? Now, as I've seen many of you that are on the webinar, you're seasoned operators. So I'm sure you all have, you know, your own ways of opening up a conversation with a member. And your success is directly related to your ability to communicate, you know, that art of the interaction to your staff. You know, very often we see these standard openers. You know, how's your program going? Do you need help? How are you doing? Is there anything you'd like to change in your workout, etc.? These are very static. These are openers that literally require yes or no answers, or good or bad answers. So these standard openers should not be part of your interaction on a day-in and day-out basis. Rather, I truly recommend that you consider a number of different openers. Let me just back up there for 1 second. Whoop. So, you know, when you get a member to communicate with you, when you get a member to converse with you, you learn a lot of good things about that member. You know, what are your goals for the week? What are your longer-term goals? You know, what have you tried in the gym? What do you really want to gain from your visit? You know, would you like to do something a little different today? These are the sorts of openers that generate conversation. And so getting away from those standard openers and really looking for ways to engage a member in conversation and to spend at least half the time listening to that member, that's the way that you really improve your ability to interact with people. And it's really not just about talking, is it? You know, we communicate in many different ways. And words, voice quality, and physiology all make up how we're communicating with another human being. And ironically, words only represent about 7% of what we say. How we say it represents about 38% of what we say. So it's not just saying, please talk to your members and improve their retention. It's about me saying, please, for your own good, spend time talking to your members and watch the impact that it has on retention. See, it's all about the passion with which you communicate that can really make a big difference. And physiology, and I know this because I'm Italian, it represents about 55% of communication. So the way you use your body represents the majority of what influences human behavior. You know, and it's often the difference between standing side by side with someone when they're talking and standing face to face. You know, the sincerity of facing someone while you're speaking with them is very, very clear. So little things like that can make a big difference when you talk about the art of interaction. And the interaction has a direct relationship on your ability to retain members. So we have the science. The science is, can we identify members who need us the most? Those members that are walking into your facility today with a red t-shirt on saying, I am going to cancel my membership. And then can you leverage the art? Can you learn the rules, but then apply them in your own way, in your own voice, that what you say compels that member to return? And this is a lesson that you can bring to every one of your staff people. You know, how do we leverage that art? Well, I truly recommend role-playing. I truly recommend peer review. Anytime you can get two staff people reviewing another's interaction or each other's interaction, that's going to generate great results because they're learning from each other and they're not feeling like they're getting dictated to by their boss. They're actually reviewing each other in order to both grow equally. So what we do at TRP is to help you operationalize retention and loyalty in your culture. We give you tools. You know, we give you that tool belt of tools that allow you to identify those members that are at risk of dropout, to identify those members that may not be raving fans of your business. But we also give you the training and the counsel to use those tools properly, to swing that hammer right, to turn that screwdriver correctly. And we call our suite of products Engage CEM, and CEM is the Customer Experience Management. And managing the customer experience is a critical cog to your success going forward. Because if you have certain expectations by which you want your members to behave, you need to manage that behavior. And one expectation that we have for all of our members is, can we keep them longer? And can we keep them happy and loyal? And that's what we focus on. Can we improve that member experience? Can we promote customer loyalty? And can we ultimately increase your income by improving retention, and then with loyal members increasing their referral, their willingness to recommend your facility to a friend or a family member? And that's done through the products in our suite. One is Interact, which allows you to interact with members that are high risk of dropout as they check into your facility. Another one is our digital platform, which is an automated email and SMS platform, which has programmed emails as well as emails that you can create yourselves that go out to members based upon their visit frequency and behaviors. Keeping a new member engaged is very critical, and we've developed Commit to Success for that, which allows you to really track that new member journey across the first 8 weeks of membership. And then we have our Net Promoter Score survey, which allows us to identify those members that they may not be at risk of dropout, but they have an opinion about our facilities that may very well turn them from raving fans to detractors of our facilities. So in conclusion, I've got a couple of parting tips for you, and then I want to spend some time taking any questions that you might have. It's all about that interaction improving retention. That's really the key learning that I want to give to you today. But my two parting tips are really two acronyms. One is MBWA and one is SOU. So let's first talk about MBWA. And MBWA is management by walking around. Now, I've walked around with some of you, and I've had the opportunity to see you folks, some of you folks, in action. And one of the most important things, I think, for any manager of any facility is visibility. So making sure that not only are we teaching our staff the art of the interaction and teaching our staff the impact that interaction has on retention, but also by doing it ourselves, by walking around the facility, interacting with members, spending time with them, identifying those members that are at risk of dropout, and throwing them that lifesaver. That's going to be something that is going to really filter down into your teams. So if you're a facility where you really want to have a high-touch environment, you need to be the one that's orchestrating that. You can't be sitting in your office looking at your Excel spreadsheets every day. It's about walking around. And then secondly, really having an SOU, or a sense of urgency. And to wrap up, I come back to another famous man who was not just an artist, but a scientist, Leonardo da Vinci. I've been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Being willing is not enough, we must do. It's not just about knowing what's right when it comes to interacting with your members. It's not just about knowing the metric for measuring retention. It's really having those things become part of our DNA as operators that is extremely important. And having a sense of urgency is something that I would encourage each and every one of you to do, because there are members today that they may not be literally walking into your facility with that red t-shirt, but there are members today coming into your club or sitting at home looking at their credit card bill and seeing that charge for your facility on it, and they're thinking, you know what, it might be time to quit. Well, when you interact with them at the point where they've already made that decision, you're going to have a tough time. But if you know that that member is close to making that decision, having that sense of urgency to identify them, to interact with them, may very well be a member-saving interaction. And that member may eventually leave. But by having that interaction, if I can take a member that's been with me for 12 months and turn that member into a member that's been with me for 14 months, 16 months, think about those incremental gains that I'm making through their monthly membership. So really have a sense of urgency with what you're doing as well. So what I'd like to do now is take any questions that you may have. Certainly, I think we have a lot of we can have a lot of discussion around this. A lot of this is opinion. A lot of this is soft science. But if there are any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them now. And let me just take a look here. I'm looking at a couple. Sophie, do you want to read the questions?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. So we have a couple of questions here. One is, if we think of interactions or in interactions according to our experience, TRP's experience, where is more critical to interact? So what time during their member journey, I'm assuming this means, is it most critical to interact?
Well, any interaction can have a beneficial effect. And certainly when a new member comes into your facility, having that interaction early on, building that relationship early on can be very, very important, because what you're doing is in lockstep with that membership. You're essentially building a relationship. And when you have a relationship consistent with a membership, you've got a member that's going to stay for a long period of time. But when a member is at high risk of dropout and they check into your facility, and you know that their member visits, their visit frequency, their visit pattern has changed significantly, that's where you need to have a member-saving interaction, where you're essentially reaching out to them and you're saying to them, look, when can we expect you in? What can we do to help make your workouts more enjoyable? How can we give you greater variety in your workouts, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's at the beginning of the journey, build that friendship consistent with the membership, but also when a member is beginning to fall away, that's when we want to reach out to them, give them a hand, and pull them back in with a member-saving interaction.
Great. Another one here, do you, TRP, have a study, or do you know about the efficiency of personal interactions versus telephonic interactions?
We do, and we can make that available to all of you that are on the call today. The fact of the matter is that we have found that the best interaction to have with a member, it may not be the most convenient, but the best interaction we can have with a member is a direct face-to-face interaction. Now, the next best thing is a telephone. And when we train people, particularly on the Net Promoter Score program, and we've got members that are disloyal for a particular reason, we always recommend that the first line of contact is pick up the phone and call. And why is that? Because we've become a society that defaults to email. We talk through email. And email has really become a very impersonal way to communicate with people. And you really can't understand through email emotion. You can understand it better through telephone, but you can really understand it when you're facing someone and you're having that deep and meaningful conversation. So we'll be happy to get that data out to the group, and hopefully that will give you a sense of, when the opportunity arises, the best interaction to have with a member is a face-to-face interaction.
And I don't see anything else unless anyone else out there has a question that they'd like to post. No, I don't see anything else, Phil.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks, Sophie. And we're coming to the top of the hour, so I really appreciate it. Looks like virtually everyone has stuck around, so that's good. And really happy that you spent the hour with us. We are recording the session, so you'll get a follow-up email from us, and you'll be able to link to the recording of the session. Feel free to share this session with anyone else in your facility, and really let's get talking about interaction with members. Having that deep and meaningful conversation can have a tremendous impact on your ability to keep members longer and to obviously increase your revenue on an ongoing basis. So thanks, Sophie, and thanks to everybody, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.